Mau dibikin mewek? Mau dibikin ngeri-ngeri sedep? Mau dibikin kaget? Mau dibikin penasaran? Mau dong! Di sini gudangnya informasi yang bikin kalian update gak kelar-kelar setiap hari. Ini baru Trans 7.
Apa ya? Makanan yang harganya receh tapi enaknya mantul.
Banyak pengen loh, ini dia. Menu receh, harga receh, dijamin enaknya mantul.
Enak banget. Coba, Mel.
Apapun yang kamu pengenin, di sini referensi lengkapnya.
Ada yang ngiler.
Jajan terus bareng makan receh dan enaknya mantul. Ini baru Trans 7. Mau dibikin ngeri-ngeri sedep? Mau dibikin kaget? Mau dibikin penasaran? Mau dong! Di sini gudangnya informasi yang bikin kalian update gak kelar-kelar.
Mantul.
Banyak pengen loh, ini dia. Menu receh, harga receh, dijamin enaknya mantul.
Enak banget. Coba, Mel.
Apapun yang kamu pengenin, di sini referensi lengkapnya.
Ada yang ngiler.
Jajan terus bareng makan receh dan enaknya mantul. Ini baru Trans 7.
We are getting the grid forming here at the Mandalika circuit.
Musim balap motor 2022 telah usai. Namun jiwa petualang untuk memacu adrenalin di atas roda 2 masih terus membara.
Away we go in Indonesia. Oh, what a dramatic start!
Mendaki gunung lewati lembah,
Baru mulai belum apa-apa, udah terjebak motornya.
menyusuri hutan, bahkan pelosok daerah yang jarang terjamah.
Sangat ekstrim dan sangat menyulitkan waktu.
Dengan latar belakang alam yang bersahaja
Stunning island of Lombok.
Mana nih tuh lampunya aku?
dan cara berkendara dengan kearifan lokal.
Can you believe it?
Banyak rintangan dalam sebuah perjalanan.
And the bike's on fire.
Terjatuh adalah pelajaran.
Goodness me, that was vicious.
Kembali bangkit sebuah keharusan. Deru petualangan tanpa henti, bertualang di negeri sendiri.
Unbelievable. What a finish.
Aduh, drama terus. Nonton nih, komedi yang nyegerin. Lucunya gak habis-habis. Ngelospol. Capek hati drama mulu. Mending dibawa happy. Mau dibikin ketawa? Mau dibikin mewek? Mau dibikin ngeri-ngeri sedep? Mau dibikin kaget? Mau dibikin penasaran? Mau dong! Di sini gudangnya informasi yang bikin kalian update gak kelar-kelar setiap hari. Ini baru Trans 7.
Apa ya? Makanan yang harganya receh tapi enaknya mantul.
Banyak pengen loh, ini dia. Menu receh, harga receh, dijamin enaknya mantul.
Enak banget. Coba, Mel.
Apapun yang kamu pengenin, di sini referensi lengkapnya.
Ada yang ngiler.
Jajan terus bareng makan receh dan enaknya mantul. Ini baru Trans 7.
We are getting the grid forming here at the Mandalika circuit.
Musim balap motor 2022 telah usai. Namun jiwa petualang untuk memacu adrenalin di atas roda 2 masih terus membara.
Away we go in Indonesia. Oh, what a dramatic start!
Mendaki gunung, lewati lembah,
Baru mulai belum apa-apa, udah terjebak motornya.
menyusuri hutan, bahkan pelosok daerah yang jarang terjamah.
Sangat ekstrim dan sangat menyulitkan waktu.
Dengan latar belakang alam yang bersahaja
Stunning island of Lombok.
Mana nih tuh lampunya kok?
dan cara berkendara dengan kearifan lokal.
Can you believe it?
Banyak rintangan dalam sebuah perjalanan.
And the bike's on fire.
Terjatuh adalah pelajaran.
Goodness me, that was vicious.
Kembali bangkit sebuah keharusan. Deru petualangan tanpa henti, bertualang di negeri sendiri.
Unbelievable. What a finish.
Aduh, drama terus. Nonton nih, komedi yang nyegerin. Lucunya gak habis-habis. Ngelospol. Capek hati drama mulu. Mending dibawa happy. Mau dibikin ketawa? Mau dibikin mewek? Mau dibikin ngiri-ngiri sedep? Mau dibikin kaget? Mau dibikin penasaran? Mau dong! Di sini gudangnya informasi yang bikin kalian update gak kelar-kelar setiap hari. Ini baru Trans 7.
Apa ya? Makanan yang harganya receh tapi enaknya mantul.
Banyak pengen loh, ini dia. Menu receh, harga receh, dijamin enaknya mantul.
Enak banget. Coba Mel.
Apapun yang kamu pengenin, di sini referensi lengkapnya.
Ada yang ngiler.
Jajan terus bareng makan receh dan enaknya mantul. Ini baru Trans 7.
We are getting the grid form.
Number one, you saw a lot of regions that are way more developed than others.
True.
There's a lot of skill discrepancies over there, but here, for a match as big as Indonesia, Philippines, well, a lot of people actually predicted a 2-0, but not for Indonesia. So you're already seeing your expectations and your predictions get shattered on the first game. But remember, it is a best of 3. The Philippines can definitely come back and equalize in game number 2. But there's an equal chance that Indonesia can take this game and get a clean sweep over Philippines.
Well, this is what we just enjoy, right? This is what makes the competitive scene so good. If you already know it's going to be a 2-0, if you already know what's going to happen, why bother watching? But now, we
Why?
just have no idea. I mean, we do this for a living, essentially, and we have no clue what's going to happen. I can't imagine what you guys back at home are feeling right now, especially when you're very aggressively, passionately supporting your country of origin.
You know, as casters here, we obviously look at it by the books. The numbers is what we look at it primarily, especially when we're looking at a match as big as this. We predicted Philippines to win in game number 1 based on their draft and also based on their experience. This is a very
Right.
well-experienced team, a team that we've seen compete in a lot of international events, winning the SEA Games, winning the M3 World Championships with this lineup. But without further ado, we're going to jump into the drafts for game number 2. Philippines now on the red side, so there is a swap.
There is a swap, but it seems like the bands are not too far different from each other, actually. If we can see here the Fanny, the Digi, and the Benedetta as well as the Atlas. So it's, you know, I think Philippines are still trying to curb that aggression coming in from the side of Indonesia. And Indonesia, on the other hand, wants to eliminate all these very annoying, very difficult problems, like the crowd control, like the Benedetta. They can be so elusive, especially in the hands of mechanical heroes, right? That is the main concern here, that mechanical prowess that some of these players can bring to the table on the right heroes.
We'll see if they go for their comfort picks again that we saw earlier on, you know. We did see Soriano pick that Beatrix. It's a signature pick. He's known as the Filipino sniper ever since he picked up that Beatrix at M3 when he displayed the crazy accuracy on the Renner, right? He also went on to get the finals MVP at M3. So whenever you see a Beatrix, especially on this Filipino side, you just expect them to find a lot of success with it. And they did early on. They utilized the Beatrix really well by clearing out the waves faster than the Melissa, not taking those trades, and again, going for that efficient macro gameplay by rotating together as a team. The Ube scrap that we've seen so many times before worked up against Team Indonesia. We watched a replay, and we saw what happened, what led up to that flank from Psychots that turned the game around. It was when Soriano stole the orange buff, and when he walked down to the mid lane, he did not check the bush. And this is something that I mentioned is very uncharacteristic for Soriano. Usually on the Renner, he shoots at every bush,
Just
he
in
doesn't
case.
leave any bush behind. He tries to open it up, and sometimes even after shooting it, he walks in just to check. And that's the little mistake. That's the little moment that actually ended up being the core, the reason, the
Exactly.
sole reason, I believe, as to how Indonesia were able to come back.
It's definitely the turning point, right? It only takes one moment for you to lose a game where you've been dominating for about 10 minutes. This is why the Mobile Legends is so exciting. The game's pace is insane, and once you lose your tempo, once you lose your advantage, it's a completely different game, and you need to adjust and do things differently from what you've been actually performing for the last 10 minutes. So now we'll have to see. I mean, the Beatrix, man, it's at this point, you see a Beatrix, it's synonymous with the Filipino sniper almost. It just comes to mind. So this is definitely something that the Philippines will try and use again. And we already mentioned earlier that having such a diverse choice of weapons allows the Beatrix to do different things. Burst people down, clear waves, right? Poke people from far away, take down turrets from far away as well. So just like that, it has been picked up. And if you look at Indonesia though, that Farsa ban, I think they're trying to curb the range from the Philippines, because that is something that the Philippines absolutely use to their advantage. The kite back and that range advantage to poke down, slowly but surely, the members from Indonesia.
To add on to that, you know, we already know that the Farsa is just a signature pick for Imam in that mid lane, but Indonesia will go for the same pick. You pick up the Beatrix, we'll take the hero that countered that Beatrix, that was able to give the Beatrix so much problems in game number 1. With the Yuzong now picked up, they are going to go for the Yve as well. And with this Yve, it does show that they are really trying to stop this Beatrix from being a problem. Soriano on his comfort pick once again, majority getting countered by 2 heroes, technically, right now.
With the right item builds, 2 or 3 bolts from the real-world manipulation will be enough to zone away to get the Beatrix low enough that he will be out of the fight. And to make things worse for him right now, the slows, right? The slows here will allow Psychos to catch up with anyone from the side of the Philippines that much more decisively. So the utility game is definitely on point on this Yve pick.
Agreed.
And if you think about it, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Philippines to try and dive in towards the side of Indonesia as well. So the kiting game that the Philippines have been abusing so often has been slightly countered by this utility from Indonesia. It's a very smart option.
The Mathilda, though, they're still going and opting for the same pick as game number 1. But like we mentioned, Philippines don't really need to change their drafts. What they need to change, in our opinion, after the game, after we spoke about it a bit, is how they took that game, how they executed their game plan. Because it came down to that 10-minute moment, that moment where Soriano did not check the bush. That moment gave Indonesia a chance to turn the tides, and this time Philippines need to be a bit more disciplined. They need to stick with what works. Don't change the course of action by going for these team fights that are technically, or yeah,
In a
literally unnecessary with this team composition. They can disengage really well, they can siege very well, but you can see right now with the Melissa ban, Philippines are already changing just a few things.
Are they going to go for the front two backs? Because I was about to say, in the previous game, they made sure Brands was having a difficult time. They made sure that Soriano was the one having a great lane. But due to that action, Psychots was able to actually be relatively impactful in the game, despite a very rough early game as well. So maybe, I was thinking that they might just change their area of focus, but now with the ban towards Brands here, it seems like they are planning on doing the same thing, just better, just cleaner.
Well, in game number 1, they banned out the Leslie and the Claude. So that means with the Melissa ban, one of those heroes will be left to open. Leslie and Claude, which are both lethal on the hands of Bronze, right? And looking at how he played the lane, honestly, I do feel like Philippines might want to give Indonesia the Claude, ban the Leslie, right? Because Leslie will create more problems for them, especially if Brands gets to farm as he usually does. He's so good at playing it slow, farming to get those power spikes. And now we're going to have to see what they go for in the bans right now. And Rashi, what do you think it's going to be?
Ooh. Valentina has been banned away from Indonesia, by Indonesia actually, so Philippines, they won't have that kind of flexibility available to them. So it's interesting to see what exactly will be the solution, especially for that Yves. Not a lot of heroes can match that mid-range coming in, that long-range artillery and utility. So they might just go the opposite direction and go for something aggressive, something that can just be a big problem, a big kill pressure, kill threat for that Yves. On the side of the Philippines, though, they go for that Claude ban instead. So Leslie is the option that they would rather face, Mirko.
All right. That's something that I personally don't agree with, right? I expected them to ban the Leslie because
same.
in the later stages, this Leslie is going to create more problems for them.
True
Remembering
damage.
that Philippines already have a taunt, already have some CC, and they already have very good disengage. With the Mathilda, the Claude won't really be able to catch up in a lot of these positions, right? But I feel like Philippines are looking at it in another way. They're looking at that Yves, they're looking at that Divine Judgment from the Kaja and the Furious Dive, obviously with the Petrify from the Yuzong. All these three heroes can lock people down for the Claw to deal so much damage, and this team fight hero is going to fit really well in Indonesia's composition. So Philippines, they're already changing a few things here now, hovering over the Faramis to go to the mid lane into the hands of Imam, and this will definitely help them because the Faramis was also one of the reasons as to why they weren't able to melt the Indonesian members down.
Not just melt the Indonesian members down, it's also the reason why they lost that fight where they were able to keep, Indonesia was able to keep Brands alive using that Cult Altar, and of course, off the back of a very great play from Brands himself. But with the Faramis in the picture, the Philippines have a lot more utility when it comes to actual survivability. They have a lot of saves, a lot of shielding, and now with the Cult Altar, that extra bit, that second chance at in the middle of a big fight. But for Indonesia, having more control on where the Philippines can maneuver around, that might be a better solution. They have banned away the Lapu-Lapu as well, so the dive potential from Philippines is very, very minimal, and we have to see what exactly will be the choice here, because for the Philippines, it seems to be the same thing. Front back all the way, abuse range, save our core members, and just like that, the answer from Indonesia, Leslie, and now it's the Akai.
Well, now considering that they have these two very vulnerable backline heroes, they need something like the Akai to provide a bit more peel, cover for the team, but Philippines respond with Grok in the jungle for Del Rosario.
What?
We mentioned that he likes to go for some crazy picks sometimes, like the Valentina, the Guinevere as well in the jungle. Well, he's trying to pull off the Grok in the jungle now here in IESF. Last time we saw it, it was high.
It was high, and it is a very, very interesting situation here because earlier in the game number 1, we saw that for Indonesia, they had an assassin. Right? And that assassin was critical because in the late fights, you saw that Soriano was just unable to get anywhere safe. He was chased away by the Black Dragon form, and he was deleted by Taz on the Gusion. Now, with an Akai instead of a Gusion, can Indonesia?
We can agree that we want to see the best of 3 go all the way.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
this time, Miyarashi will be predicting Indonesia to win, to use the caster curse to get the most value out of this incredible series of Indonesia versus Philippines. Once again, as we jump into the land of dawn, with Taz starting on the orange buff, and Del Rosario doing the same on the opposite side.
Slow start for both these junglers. They are tankier junglers essentially, so they are going to be playing a lot more for utility. But I guess Taz on the Akai can be a lot more aggressive, and just like that, you can see that the Philippines, they really enjoy using Villaluna to get a lot of information and just be a big nuisance. And you can see the response coming in from the Indonesian players. The Philippines.
Both teams again just fighting for that mid control that is so prio, so necessary now in this current meta. Both Taz and Del Rosario are looking to go for this lethal Wanderer, but it does feel like Indonesia will have a bit more of an advantage with the faster wave clear in the mid lane. That's the Lethal Wanderer secured by Taz, getting him a bit more XP and gold to play with. So he'll have that power spike very early on, already at level 4.
As we mentioned, the wave clear game is now being a lot more monitored, a lot more managed by the players from the side of Indonesia. They've suffered from it once, they are not trying to suffer the same fate again. So right now, they're just moving around, and I think before the first turtle spawns, it's going to be relatively slow. But as I say that though,
uh-oh, there you go. That's the barrier with a wild charge. Psychos now going to be caught. First blood over to Philippines, but look at Taz. He's able to bring the members back in with a heavy spin. Del Rosario going to fall. The jungler for the XP lane, and Dapda will be forced to flicker out of there. Villaluna a bit late on this rotation to match up against the Indonesian mid laners, but it is still just going to be a 1-for-1.
So 1-for-1. So both teams now holding their own, but this is where things get a bit hairy. The first turtle, where everyone
backs off.
Back away, and we can take a look at how the changes have impacted this Faramis, right? The Cult Altar was used in that fight, and with one single spell, the rest of the team from Indonesia is able to melt down that HP bar. So it really isn't an all-win teamfight solution, but it is very situationally used to help save members from big burst damage.
Now it's a complete change from game number 1. Imam, though, going to be immobilized. That's the damage coming through. Whew. Sniped down by Brands, but the kill will go over to Hijume. Brands sacrificing a bit of gold there in the bottom side, but will still be able to catch up down below to pick up that cannon minion.
With stronger laners on the hands of the Indonesian players, they are now able to actually match the aggression, the fights, the skirmishes from the members of the Philippines. And now you can see that the Kaja pick is just having a lot more impact. This is what they wanted to do in game number 1, but the macro play coming in from the Philippines was able to deny that. That won't be the case for this game though, and now this becomes a contest of proactivity. Who can have the higher work rate, the more versatile maneuvers, and just the more proactive plays.
And this is the reason as to why I felt like the Leslie should have been